now it's fairly clear that there was some degree of Moroccan involvement, official state involvement in what happened in Ceuta. We have testimonies by Moroccan migrants who crossed into Ceuta who said quite openly that Moroccan security forces told them to go into Ceuta, to go to Spain. We have videos of trucks unloading people going into Ceuta in front of very passive policemen. So I think it's fairly obvious that Morocco had a hand in this and wanted to send a clear message to Spain.
The European Union is to hold an emergency meeting to discuss the crisis in Ceuta, the Spanish enclave in North Africa. It follows clashes between Spain and other European countries over the arrival of tens of thousands of migrants from Morocco into the territory. Spanish officials say most of those who entered Ceuta illegally in the past few days have now left. But what was behind this mass influx? Let's speak to Riccardo Fabiani, who is the project director for North Africa at the International Crisis Group. He's in Portugal at the moment. Hi there, Riccardo.
Hi.
So tell us what you think happened here.
Well, so I think by now it's fairly clear that there was some degree of Moroccan involvement, official state involvement in what happened in Ceuta. We have testimonies by Moroccan migrants who crossed into Ceuta who said quite openly that Moroccan security forces told them to go into Ceuta, to go to Spain. We have videos of trucks unloading people going into Ceuta in front of very passive policemen. So I think it's fairly obvious that Morocco had a hand in this and wanted to send a clear message to Spain, possibly about various things. But what is clear is that there was an official support or facilitation by the state in all of that.
Well, in that case, the state has blood on its hands, doesn't it? Because we've got all those people pouring into that territory and more than 60 people died. Yes,
so that also shows to you what kind of cynicism, if you like, was involved in all of this, right? Why, let your home population do that in front of the cameras of people in the day of social media and so on and so forth, right? So to me, this shows quite obviously that the Moroccans had a political agenda in doing this.
And what was the political agenda then?
The political agenda, there's two competing explanations that might be actually complementary. One was related to the Spain-Algeria rapprochement of the past few weeks. Now, Morocco and Algeria are locked into a dispute. They've been using migration and other forms of pressure vis-a-vis various European countries, including Spain. When one country in Europe gets close to Morocco or Algeria, the other country will always retaliate. And then there's another competing theory, which I think is fairly plausible, which is the possibility that actually there was some degree of also US and Israeli involvement in this. What I'm talking about is that for weeks, there was incitement by many figures on the Israeli and US right, basically calling on Morocco to do something about Ceuta, to punish Spain for its position on Gaza and its position during the Iran war. Now, this might sound conspiratorial.
I was going to say, it sounds almost like a conspiracy theory there. Do we have any evidence for this?
So there's the incitement online, right, very publicly, many figures calling on Morocco to do something on Ceuta. And there's another, I would say, key issue here, right? Why would Morocco do this now, right? This is the biggest crisis that has affected Ceuta for forever, basically, for many years, right? Much bigger than the 2021 crisis that already happened at the time. Why punish Spain, right? Okay, there is the Algerian angle that I just mentioned, but it's not a sufficient explanation for something like this, for this big. So again, we are speculating, of course. I'm not saying this is the reason, but in terms of plausibility, this is as good as any other explanation for what.
I mean, it's deadly, deadly serious. People have lost their lives, and obviously Spain is going to have to deal with the political fallout from this. And there's a sense from what you're saying that might be precisely the aim of what happened. So how is Europe going to deal with this going forward?
So I think this is exactly where Morocco has a huge advantage here, right? First of all, Spain has not reacted, has not tried to basically escalate this issue politically, right? They haven't really accused Morocco of anything. The Europeans are divided, right? Italy and Finland have come out very clearly wanting to exclude Spain from the Schengen area. So the point here is that the Europeans are sufficiently divided and Spain is sufficiently afraid of Morocco that there will be probably no major political consequence. Of course, there's a meeting, they are going to discuss what to do next, but in terms of a political response to what happened in Ceuta, it's very unlikely that we're going to see anything of substance given the circumstances.
I mean, one of the ironies of all of this is that Ceuta is so far away from mainland Spain. There are agreements in place to basically stop migrants having any capacity to potentially claim asylum or potentially claim residency that would then get them into mainland Europe. So what is it that needs to change? What is it that Europe needs to do to progress this to a point whereby it's not just internal factions, say Italy and Spain, warring between themselves, possibly to at the coordination, the background coordination of other states?
Well, the issue here is that we're not just facing a migration crisis, right? But we're facing something else. There's a political, very likely, I would say, political logic behind this. So it's not necessarily about coordinating better and, having a different migration strategy. That obviously is something that could be worth discussing, but it is not the point. The point here is that there is a need for Europe to be a much more assertive, I think, geopolitical actor, particularly when facing this kind of actions, this kind of episodes that really resemble the type of hybrid war events that we've discussed for a long time.
It's really interesting you use the word war there, because I've seen the photographs of migrants making their way into Ceuta with some commentators saying this is an act of war. And it was quite difficult at the time to understand the point that was being made here. But if you're suggesting that these migrants were enticed to encroach into this territory en masse by state actors, it does feel like asymmetric or hybrid warfare. In which case, what is the legitimate response to this?
Well, of course, this is something that cannot be really answered in a few seconds. But the point here is that Europe is perceived by many actors, particularly at its periphery, as a weak, a political actor. It's basically a very large, coalition of states and the European Union and so on that is unable to assert and protect its own interests, right? So actors like Russia, actors like Morocco in this specific case, and so on, really feel that if they want to send a message, if they want to get something out of Europe, they can do this and feel no consequences. So the question here now becomes, what should be the consequences, right? Is Europe capable of come up with a response, whether it's, I don't know, trade responses or sanctions or whatever, right? Or will there just be silence? Will there just be an acceptance of what just happened? I think this is where many actors sitting at the periphery of Europe feel that they can get away with murder, in a sense, because there will be no response whatsoever to what was just done.
Riccardo, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for your insight. That's Riccardo Fabiani, who's the project director for North Africa. I mean, either way you look at this, the idea that the Moroccan government appears to think that the lives of its own citizens are so cheap that it can send them over the border in that way with that loss of life is beyond belief.
Yeah, the Sunday Times is reporting that while some migrants said guards did try to stop them, others claimed the authorities were so overwhelmed they just let and even encouraged them through. Now, when the Sunday Times reached out to the Moroccan government, they didn't respond to a request for a comment. If we do hear from them, of course, we'll tell you here.